Aloha everybody and welcome to the Wild Wahine. This is Kaylani and this is your astro forecast for this week, October 11th through the 17th. Before we jump into the forecast, I just want to invite everybody to participate in my Halloween sale. I have 15% off all my astrology consults and my tarot readings. The code is Halloween15. You can find more information in the description box below, the link in bio, depending upon where you're watching it, and you can go to www.thewildwahine.com for more details. So this week is going to feel much better. We're going to be feeling more optimistic and a little less frustrated. We do still have some planets retrograding, but for the most part, we have a lot of positive aspects, a lot of sextiles, a lot of trines, which are of the nature of Venus and Jupiter. So I'm feeling good about this week and what's to come, or what we have cooking for this week. So we kick off the week starting with Saturn stationing, and it's going to be stationing direct. So we feel good about this. Saturn is in its home sign of Aquarius, where it has been retrograde for the last several months. Anybody that is fixed sign energy, which would be Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, are going to feel this a little bit more intensely and feel a little bit more tension maybe with that. But where we felt that maybe some of our energy has been draining, or we just didn't have that long endurance type of energy, because that's what Saturn is when we talk about energy. It can be depression and heaviness, of course, but it also can be what it takes to go through something for a long time. It's like a long distance runner, that kind of energy. We're going to be getting that back. We will be activating. We're not moving fast because, of course, Saturn is, a further out planet. It's not the furthest one out, but of the seven traditional planets, it was always the last one before we, found Uranus and Neptune and Pluto. So it's slow moving. So it's not going to be energy that's igniting fast and moving very fast. It's moving relatively slow. So, but we're building, and that's the whole thing about Saturn too, and Saturn in Aquarius is the places where we built. Maybe the past couple months we've been thinking about how we wanted to put things together. We've been gathering all of our information together, and now we finally are getting the okay, and now we can kind of get the team together. Now we can buy our materials. Now we can do things so that we can build that thing that's coming. And so it's a really good energy for that, especially if you've been waiting or you've been feeling a little bit tired and exhausted. So you're going to have more emphasis in that Aquarian area of your chart. We will feel a little bit of tension. There might be a little uphill battles. It is Saturn. Of course, Saturn is always like the long lesson. It tends to sometimes be like where there's a lot of tension, and through that tension you learn a lesson, you get a gift, you learn how strong you are, you suddenly pull out something that you never thought you had, and you surprise yourself. So all of those things happen. So just know that, it doesn't mean that like everything's perfect, but it definitely means that it's moving in a direction and we're going to be going somewhere. Venus is in Sagittarius, will be sextiling Saturn in Aquarius. So Saturn is now direct, and so we have this sextile to Venus that's happening. We're feeling that now until October 17th. It goes exact on the 12th, and it's at 6 degrees. So this is usually a positive aspect. Saturn does have an interesting relationship because it is exalted in Libra, which is Venus's sign. Now Venus, of course, is in Sag, so it's in fire. It has a lot more exuberance, and it has more energy for getting things done and for wanting to create things. So some of the things that we're looking for this energy is really like putting energy into long-term planning and building of things. Venus wants to always make things beautiful, always wants to make things pleasing, always wants to, have a place where you're having a compromise in some way. So the way that Venus and Saturn work together, a lot of times it's like creating beauty over a longer period of time. So it's like if you're doing pottery, we know that there's sometimes we can't make beautiful things right away. We need to like have the kiln and kind of like mold it, and then it needs to age. Like sometimes there's just things that need to sit for a while. Like if you're making tinctures, if you're an herbalist, or if you're making oils or anything, sometimes it's like a 4 to 6 weeks. Or if you're making delicious food and you're using the crock pot, it takes a while, and in the morning, your food smells really good and you're like ready to eat. So think about all of the things that you're planning, that you're putting ahead, that just take a little bit of time for them to really like reap the rewards. That's that type of energy. So this energy sometimes can look like, I know especially with the Rona, so many people's events like weddings and like retreats and other kinds of like gatherings or conventions, they've been like staved off, and they've been canceled or rescheduled. So I'm definitely seeing like a little bit of an opening with that, and where people are going to be able to say like, oh, we have a date and let's plan for this after pushing it off and pushing it off and pushing it off due to like everything that was been happening in the world. So I see a lot of those things opening up for people and them having like the celebrations and the gatherings and things like that that they want. It could also be about planning long-term trips, especially because the holidays are coming up. You know, with Sagittarius, a lot of times that is going to a foreign place, going to a foreign land. In terms of if you're talking about love and relationships, it could be finding somebody that in connecting with somebody that's where there's an age difference, somebody that's potentially older than you. It could be just bringing youthful people into the office to kind of like freshen up the space and give some new ideas and some new like excitement. You know, it's bringing some excitement into places that might be a little bit more structured, using spaces in different ways. Like I know my son, when he used to homeschool, they use like the museum, which is such a Venusian kind of Saturnian space with all these old artifacts, but they're beautiful, as like a classroom, which, you know, is like this kind of fun like educational space, which is very like Sagittarian. So using traditional beautiful spaces in different exciting type of ways that bring in beauty and like wisdom and stuff. So all kinds of different things are happening with that, and so that looks like that's going to be interesting for people. Our next aspect this week, the sun is in Libra. It's trining Jupiter, which is retrograde, but it will be going direct at the end of the week. In Aquarius, we'll be feeling that on the 11th all the way to the 17th. It goes exact on the 14th at 22 degrees. So some of the positive things that come from this, well, the sun, whenever we have sun Jupiter, that is like big energy. That's see and be seen energy. It's kinetic. It's excitement over things. It's really being able to like have clarity about things, and it's like generally good luck. And you know, with sun in Libra, the compromise, the things that you wanted to have, the balance that you wanted to create, the beauty that you wanted to create, the art that you wanted to create, it's getting a yes, it's getting an okay. Now Jupiter, of course, is retrograde during this time. It will be kind of stationing and moving forward during this time. So we're again not looking like, it's not a gun that gets shot off at the beginning of a race, you know, where you're lightning fast out of the park, but it definitely is like a okay, and then the next phase, you know, you're kind of sort of building the next phase. So this is all energy, really the energy all this week is not like we're just going to drop everything and just start running towards the finish line, but it is like we're almost there. You know, we held on to the end and we're almost there. We can almost taste, you know, freedom, so to speak. So it'll feel kind of sort of like that. In terms of the world and what's happening in the world, I wonder if it's going to be like more like agreements to things, like worldwide agreements, things that, you know, there was, you know, a need for some kind of compromise, and then people saying, okay, like, yes, we're going to compromise with this, especially with Jupiter and Aquarius. Aquarius tends to be the collective groups, people that kind of sort of want to go their own way and do their own thing. And like people are coming together and saying, okay, let's compromise on this to make sure things are moving forward. Because it's the sun, and sun in Libra, sometimes sun represents the father. So it could have things to do with the father, could have things to do with male figures, or just being seen in a very visible way, and a visible compromise that happens. It really has that feeling of like the hero coming home with the boon. Like he just went through his dark night of the soul, had all of these things kind of taken from them, but then you always, when you finish your hero's journey, you end up with a gift, and then that gift is a gift that can like save your community or save the people. So it really is like coming in with the prize, you know, or like the Olympic torch, and you're running to light it at the beginning of the games, like that kind of feeling. So it's a lot of energy. For nothing else, it doesn't necessarily mean that everything's going to be okay. And whenever we have kind of Jupiter in the game, it's always going to be a glass half full, not half empty. It's never going to be a situation where you're just like looking at the negative parts of things. You're really looking at all of the possibilities and what can happen, and all the enthusiasm and the excitement from that. And the sun is already kind of bright and shiny and doing its thing and drawing people in anyhow. So it's just usually a very positive aspect, especially for you to put yourself out there in the world and do something. Now there is, of course, challenges that come with that, as there always is, of just putting yourself out too much, a lot of grandiosity, a lot of excess that can come with that. You got to watch your ego around this time, that you're not so boastful and so like, I'm doing this and that, you know, and you're not really like, for example, giving thanks to people who help you get to the position or whatever. Make sure there's just a lot of gratitude. That's a huge thing with Jupiter too. Actually, whenever you're working with Jupiter as a planet or as a planetary archetype, gratitude is huge, because it's like the bestower of big gifts, but it's also, you have to be grateful for that. So that's really important, or they might get snatched. So our next aspect is Mercury retrograde in Libra, sextiling Venus in Sagittarius. We're going to be feeling that from the 13th to the 19th. It perfects on the 16th. So this is a fire-air sextile. It's about inspiration and action. Again, like very positive sextiles here. So Mercury is retrograde. We were feeling kind of the crunch with that, and a lot of frustration that happened last week with just trying to decide on what we're going to do. And we're still in this place, just because we're still in this big, heavy Libra energy where we're trying to decide, and we're trying to make a decision on what we want to do, what we don't want to do, and how we're negotiating it with everybody else, because we really want everybody else to be okay. But it's kind of hard to do that. What's really nice about Mercury when it's sextiling Venus, and they almost always make positive aspects, it's like impossible for them to make negative aspects, is there's a harmony between our heart and our mind. It really has like rom-com energy. It just reminds me of that, where rom-coms always have to do with like a problem, of course, where the loving couple is on the outs with each other, or, you know, we just are introduced with people who kind of diametrically don't like each other, or they like somebody doesn't tell the truth about who they are, and or they pretend like they are married, or something happens. There's always some sort of like mercurial misinformation, which at the end of the movie it gets revealed, like the truth is here, and then you have to decide whether you want to go with your heart, whether you want to go with Venus, you know, or not. And so like that kind of rom-com energy is kind of the energy with this. So it tends to be light, it tends to be playful. It's really good for works of art, for writing, for saying beautiful things, for poetry, for like agreements that are pleasing. Now Mercury is retrograde right now, so you know there's always wonky things that can happen with that, and it reminds me of a time during a Mercury retrograde where I booked this job that I really wanted. I was really excited about, and then I just like had worked so hard on the audition and everything, and I booked it, and I was like yes, and I was so excited, and I just like had like my outfit laid out for the next day, and I just knew everything that was going to happen, and I ended up being like late to the actual call. It was like 11 o'clock call, and I thought it was 1 or something because I wrote it down wrong, and it was just like that one like weird, like I was so excited, you know, everything ended up okay, but I was so excited and so happy to be like part of it, but it just like the details kind of sort of got lost in it. So it's a lot of like excitement about things, but then details not kind of surfacing. So just make sure you're doing all of the typical things that you do during a Mercury retrograde, which is double checking everything, making sure that if you sign your name on something that all the information is correct, that you have everything down. These are positive things, but there can still be snafus or weird things, or you didn't initial here but you signed here. All of those types of things always do happen, but for the most part it is usually pretty positive. Just having conversations with people, like conversations that could be actually quite meaningful, because Venus is in Sagittarius, so it could take on a spiritual sense in a lot of ways. Sometimes like mercurial conversations are very chit-chatty, you know, like if you're in line with somebody, you just kind of sort of make comments about things, but this could actually, a comment or a talk story with somebody that you have in line could lead to like a deep awakening within yourself, where you're like, wow, like I just noticed something through having this exchange, and it like deeply touched me. So being open to that is great. There are, as always, challenges that come with that. It could be just like gossip, you know, just gossip that's fun and funny, but it's also like not always very fun when you're talking about somebody behind their back, especially if they find out. And it is Mercury retrograde, so they probably will, so you just want to watch that. It also just like, because you know Mercury has all the things to do with like shopping and all of that, so it could be like shopping for things, little things that you like but that are unnecessary sometimes. Talking about stuff that doesn't really mean anything, that doesn't have a purpose, that's just speaking to just say stuff, or you know, disingenuous stuff that just kind of sort of comes out of your mouth. But those are all like not horrible things in and of themselves, generally speaking, unless you're gossiping, and then that's probably not that great. So just a little bit of a peek into next week. I wanted to do with the sun squaring Pluto. That's kind of like kicking off kind of at the end of the week going into next week, and I just want to talk about it because we're going to be back in this place where we're having some power struggles, having to negotiate with authority, and how we do that, especially with the sun in Libra. We're here, we're showing up, we're ready to compromise, we're ready to, have a discussion about how things are going to be, but things are Plutonian. There might be some new information that comes up. There might be things that we didn't initially know about that suddenly now we do. And now we have to change maybe our position or change the way that we do things. So that can be like a little bit stressful, that's coming into next week. But for most part, this week feels pretty good, and we're just riding those waves. So again, thanks so much for joining for this week's Astro Chat. If you have any questions, just make sure you leave them in the comment section below. You can also follow me on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and you can follow me on Instagram, you can follow me on Facebook, and I'm on Twitter, and I'm on TikTok, so find me at one of those. We also have Clubhouse rooms, which will all be linked in the description box below, or you can find them in the link in bio, depending upon where you are watching this. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you next week with next week's Astro Chat. Aloha.